Okay, thank you, Joe. You'll see how I've laid this presentation out just very shortly. And I'm assuming most folks aren't very familiar with West Virginia, and I just want to give you a couple minutes of useless information. But you can see the shape of this state. You know, you just don't sit down and freehand draw West Virginia like you do Wyoming or something that's a rectangle. So the top of our state really is the same latitude as New York City. Down here, we're just 45 minutes from the North Carolina border. This is the new suburb of Washington, D.C. These counties here in the eastern panhandle, so it's just 50 miles over to D.C. And then over here is the same amount west as Columbus, Ohio. 5,000-foot mountains, 120-foot elevation on the Potomac River. And so for botany, birds, wildlife, West Virginia is super diverse. We have Canadian flora, we have Midwestern flora. So it's a very interesting state as far as the natural history goes. I'm right here in the geographic center, and I've been there since 1979. And so with that said, I just want to show you our state from an armchair in the living room. This is sunrise from our front porch a few years ago. And so we'll just take a look at our garden, our state, et cetera, West Virginia has America's newest national park. I think 3 years ago, the New River Gorge National Park was instituted. Anyway, this is our newest national park in the United States. This is, at one point, the longest single-span bridge in the world, and I think maybe China has the biggest now. But this is the New River, which starts in North Carolina, comes north into West Virginia, and eventually to the Ohio River. So it brings plants and birds from the Carolinas up into our state. This national park is a little bit different. You just don't drive around and see tons of buffalo and elk and stuff. But if you're a rock climber, whitewater rafter, birds, botany, hiking, it's really becoming more popular every year. This is beneath the bridge, and here we have Rhododendron maximum, our state flower. Here's sweet azalea, Rhododendron arborescens, and the New River running here. And we'll get into Rhododendron maximum shortly, but with our elevation going from 100 feet to 5,000 feet, you can travel to see Rhododendron maximum blooming if you like, collect pollen, take pictures, just have a nice outing from early June through early August. That's a 2-month blooming season due to elevation. This is August 8th in Cranberry Glades, a high elevation glacial remnant botanical area. Whitewater rafting is huge at this area, and staying on shore suits me just fine. Now, just the other day, I saw this headline. Just a game-changing discovery. Well, I've been doing this since I was 11 years old. No-till farming. I just thought it was a way to prepare soil easily, cover your soil in next spring, rake out where your rows are and plant. But luckily I was conserving carbon, I was enhancing microbes, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, this is 1960 or whatever. Here's a part of the veggie garden, and then here's where, pull this back, the peas were planted Tuesday. We get our no-till coverage from our horse, and he would be in the house if it weren't for the fact he won't use a litter pan. But he has the full run of his pasture, plus when we're here, just wander through the yard and around. He doesn't bother the ornamentals whatsoever, friends with everyone. He's 27 years old and can still canter up to the top of the hill, so he's in great shape. And he'll walk these gravel paths through the some of the plantings and does not touch a plant. He'll wander around, and how do we know that he stays on the path? There's testimony to staying on the path. And back with our nursery, when we had open houses, of course you have the young kids, and they don't even go on the paths. Well, there's no need to correct them or anything. You just mention to generally the mother, but the parent, that, you know, they must be having a good time looking at the shrubs and things. He said, and we just freshly manured these beds and applied this pine needles. And then you talk about the kids coming out of the beds and onto the path immediately. We're just suggesting, well, you know, freshly manured places, and that was enough. So I have this is the home garden, and this is where the Victory Garden originated. And with 1940 through 1946, and you've got Google, you've got all this internet. Well, for years, once or twice a year, I'll pull out a volume and look through 6 months worth. And in that 6-year span of this magazine, it virtually touches any kind of horticulture that you want. And so I said, well, I'll just use this as my guideline, my outline, because here's the editorial board. You've got the president of men's garden clubs. I think everyone up here should know Donald Wyman from years of writing. Professor at Ohio State University, chairman of this and that. It's just a who's who of horticultural people back in the 1940s, and I grew up reading works by lots of these folks. So with this as my Google, we're just going to look at just lots of stuff here. And here's the board. And T.A. Weston from over Weston Nurseries, just lots of names that should ring a bell to folks. And of course, the initial issue was about the Victory Garden. Grow your own food, help get through the 1940s. And so a big factor in our garden is food processing, storage, etc. Butternut squash, one of the best vegetables going. And here you go, right up here, part of the pumpkins. Pumpkin family's great. Eating, decorating, just one of our favorite crops. And this is when butternut was hitting the market. Here's our fall decorations. And we got a butternut squash peeking through there. And here's butternut squash. Now, as a photographer, who put that in the darn picture? Now, Lowe's and these places, you bring a coupon in and we'll match the price. I've taken that to many Lowe's garden centers and they will not match this price. So I know back in the mid-1900s up through 70s, 80s, you know, folks would go to the Carolinas, West Virginia and all and dig plants out of the wild, pot them up for sale or bring them back, grow them on for a few years. So I'm sure a lot of these sources were from down in the central Appalachians. But yeah, 25 cents each. There's rhododendron maximum. And mountain laurel. Here's we used to have about a dozen of Richard James's laurels, and we kept 7 or 8 of them. Just absolutely stunning. Flame azaleas down here. That's probably a 2 to 3 gallon pot now. 5 for $12. Yep. And I was just talking with Joe of where, does anyone here know where to buy a rhododendron maximum? I mean, there's nowhere, that's our state flower, and there's no nurseries, to my knowledge of traveling the state, that has them. But that's just a great plant for many reasons. And here's an article, you know, about that. You'd have to Google this to even get any kind of information, but touting rhododendron maximum. Oh, and with my plant regulatory work, my territory was from the top of West Virginia to the bottom, 40 counties. And so lots of it takes some back roads and things. And this is down near the New River Gorge National Park. Rhododendron maximum fills power lines, high elevation fields. It's just miles of it. So this is the last week of June, and the maximum just miles and miles along the road, almost faded. Here they're in seed pods, so basically finished blooming. And then here's this in a power line all by itself, just like a beacon. So Catawba rhododendrons in the general area, but when you're looking at lots of plants all over, you'll get genetic things creeping up now and then. But that definitely had something else going on, and just the waxiest blossoms, kind of more pointed leaves. So there's bound to have been a bee visited 2 different species on that. But to have an hour worth of plants faded and then see this one, that was kind of nice. Now with rhododendron, they have their own ecological community. One little native orchid is Small's Twayblade, grows virtually under rhododendron maximum only through the Appalachians. And it's just a diminutive little thing, 3 to 6 inches tall. And being an orchid, if you gave this to your prom date, you probably wouldn't get very far on going to the prom. But it's an orchid, complicated flower structure. And here's our companion rhododendrons here with our orchid. This is Cranberry Glades also. It's a well-known botanical area, boardwalk, et cetera, et cetera. birds that live in rhododendron thickets. Swainson's warbler is an inhabitant of the southern rhododendron thickets in our state. In the east, they do rhododendron thickets through Appalachia, and then cypress swamps in the east, toward the east coast of the southeast. So my birding friends in Richmond, they go over to Norfolk to the swamps there to see it. I go down to the New River. Black-throated blue warblers love the rhododendron thickets, and they often have nice little streams running through populations. Black-throated green warbler, there's some seed pods needed collected. Louisiana water thrushes. And Rose Bay is one of our largest and most showy native rhododendrons in the wild, reaching a height of more than 30 feet. Half of this is about its limit under average garden conditions after many years. And believe it or not, rhododendron thickets were a hindrance to early pioneers trying to traverse these Appalachian mountains. They don't have a thorn anywhere on them, but you just cannot get through a thicket of rhododendrons without major work. And so I would challenge anyone to walk from the bottom of this hill to the top and maybe pick you up in 2 or 3 days. You just cannot get through them. So they were known as rhododendron hells. Quite a physical obstacle. And rhododendrons, again, often streamside, and they just make terrific backdrops for photography. Now, we have hemlock woolly adelgid. This is the scenic highway near Cranberry Glades, runs about 20 miles along the high tops of the mountains, and you can look down and just see acres and acres of dead hemlock trees. So that's not gonna affect our state population, but with losing hemlocks, you're gonna lose a lot of things that are associated with the rhododendron hemlock community. Here's Donald Wyman, American hollies. Now, does anyone recognize the hybridizer from the 40s, 50s, Orlando Pride? He was in Butler, Pennsylvania. So I thought that I would, for our plant sales, go up to Pride Nurseries and get plants. Well, Orlando Pride Nurseries now is purveyor of the finest American hollies. The azalea business is done. But you cannot beat, hollies are in our area naturally, and dogwood, American dogwood and American holly, to me, can't have too many of those in your garden. So here we are discussing that. And they're great bird food. This is deciduous holly here. Deciduous hollies. This is sparkleberry, in case people interested in a cultivar name. And if you like winter arrangements, see, everybody loves, you can't beat a bouquet of deciduous holly branches at Thanksgiving time. And here's American holly. And how about this for an author? So Guy Nearing writing in our article on American hollies. And here we go. Here's our American holly trees. Just a favorite, easy to grow, at least our area. They seem to be pest-free, deer-free. And again, survival food for wintertime. The first thing that we notice in January, February is witch hazels. We have a bunch of witch hazel cultivars, and you walk out the first warm New Year's Day, and there's the scent of witch hazels in the air. And he mentions this vernalis as a species. We don't have vernalis in West Virginia, but we have Virginiana, just common witch hazel, and it blooms in October. And so Halloween, witch hazels are bright yellow. We get questions of how is your forsythia blooming in the fall? But all over our area, drive and you'll see dots of yellow here and there. And the witch hazels are in full bloom, the American witch hazel. And you bring a bouquet of those into the back porch. And then here's our oriental witch hazels. Again, Donald Wyman's an expert on the shrubbery of that time. And they bloom for us January through early March. Tough as nails for the flowers, snow, freezing. They just bloom, and lots of them are just highly fragrant. And so they're very colorful. We have something blooming almost 12 months a year. I think this might be Magic Fire and Luna, some of the different color shades. And so with plants in bloom in January, February, there are bugs. And so what eats bugs? We have birds. You'll see them working the witch hazel bushes. This is a ruby-crowned kinglet, just having a ball with the bugs that are out around these bushes. So we would not have a garden without a witch hazel or more. And photography. Back in the film days, you had 1-2 rolls of film to use on who knows how many pictures. So settings and composition, whether it's wildflowers, garden flowers, crucial. You just couldn't fire off 100 shots and then send 5 rolls of film for one type of flower. But one thing that's nice are black backgrounds, and the principles are the same now as they were in this day and age, but the black background is just super. It just knocks out anything except your subject. And this is one of our white colored nudiflorum wild azaleas. This is also nudiflorum. This is Yates' best, Tame Yates' second best. And then when you go to birds, I set up the perfect little dish of mealworms, the perfect branch for them to land on. Step back, tripod, everything focused on my perch and branch. Well, the bluebirds, they'd land on the background, go to the dish, leave, repeat, never did hit the branch. So you have to go out and tell them, I need you on the branch so that you make a nice picture. So finally they caught on, and the youngsters too. And then sometimes just your background. This is all our hemlock group of trees, essentially made a black background. And sometimes pink coneflowers in the background make a solid background. And then this year we had a hunter moon. I don't know if you follow stars, which I don't, but as the headlines, hunter moon can be seen, and it's many times bigger than normal. So this bluebird just had to have his picture taken in front of the hunter moon in August. Lilies make great companions, and one of our favorite native lilies is Canada lily. It grows in our mountain counties along the roads, forest edges. And then, of course, hummingbirds are all over with their flowers and things. So they make perfect plant companions, food, nectar sources for hummingbirds. And I just had to put this in. We had our Olympics last summer, and this hummingbird, as you can see, proudly landed perfectly this approach to the lily. So here's our, we used to have Turk's cap, but here's Canada lily, and does well. So these things are 4 to 7 feet tall, and if you're weeding your rhododendrons and you're in the Canada lily patch, that's the view from your sitting on the ground looking up, just a orange starry sky. And then here's our Fantastica, this rhododendron, and our hummingbirds. And so they make, for rhodos, it's a terrific situation. One of our Middle Atlantic chapter meetings was at the Blandy Experimental Farm near Winchester, Virginia, Northern Virginia, which is now the Virginia State Arboretum and Orlando White Experiment Farm. So this is who this spot is named for. So here you go. No need to look any farther than following these directions right here for hybridizing. My mentor for hybridizing was Harry Wise. He was a silver medal recipient of the ARS. Just loved growing seedlings, hybridized with maximum a lot, and then just lots of deciduous azalea hybrids and such. And so for years, we traded back and forth, traveled together, etc. But the next little group of pictures are some of his hybrids. So this is Dexter's Pink and Rhododendron Maximum. So you have a rhododendron with very nice color, but this is June 15th. So that's the maximum genetics, popping this into June instead of May. So super nice trusses in early summer. This is Rhododendron Maximum plus the species Mackinaw. It's a rhododendron flower, but the new growth on this plant is just more showy than the flowers. And here's the new growth. This is my pergola that got blown apart that particular spring by a big windstorm. And again, flowers, but like a 4 to 5 foot plant that look full of this is just a showstopper. One of my botany trips to Florida, Harry says, well, you're going to be in the Eastern Panhandle. If you can be taken to Rhododendron chapmanii, I'd like some pollen of that. So our leader was a retired forester for the Apalachicola National Forest. He says, oh yeah, no problem. So here's, saw palmettos and rhododendrons. But I collected pollen, and then now, of course, they have to change all these names. So at the moment, I think it's rhododendron minus variety chapmanii, and then what's in the Smoky Mountains is minus variety minus, but the mountain form and the Florida form, you got heat tolerance, cold tolerance, and that just made a terrific cross. Softball-sized trusses, they take our heat. They've never lost one to minus temperatures, etc. And that was one of his best crosses. Early on, my property had no trees, so had to have shade structure because it'd be bringing plants home from meetings. And so from all these little guys, and then move things here and there, and these trees grew, and all these other trees grew. But this same area, whatever we planted seemed like it grew. So that's 15 years after that first picture of that structure right there. So we have plants to the top, 10 feet tall. And all these azalea crosses, et cetera, et cetera. Joe Parks from this chapter was down and visited. This is flame azalea, calendulaceum, and arborescens, the sweet azalea. So this is June 12th, full bloom of a flame hybrid and waxy leaves. And he was very impressed with this particular plant and just loaded. This is Cumberlandence right here behind it. And here's Cumberlandence and arborescens, one of the seedlings from that. Atlanta, these are just some more of his crosses, arborescens and prunifolium, one of the maybe Rothschild type azaleas and Atlanticum, but just lots of beautiful plants. Then on that same Florida trip, he says, now, you know, if you traveled, he always gave you a shopping list of what to bring back. So I brought back Ostrinum pollen from the Apalachicola River. He put it on flame azalea, so you have a fragrant, colorful plant, and then on just a colorful, tough plant. And the results, there was, I mean, everyone was great. These gigantic ball trusses on lots of them. The light-colored plants, highly fragrant. The orangish, yellowish colored plants, no fragrance. So, you know, just all kinds of genetics were working. Just all these pastel shades. Just no shortage of color combinations. And that, we gave tons of these away. Here's one, this is now probably 12 feet tall. These are seedling crop from 1989. And the one native azalea not in West Virginia that I like is plumleaf azalea, prunifolium. And this next little group are some of my dabblings in hybridizing. So we've got anthers with pollen, we got stigma giving hopefully a nice seed pod. So these are some of my efforts. And this is Atlanticum, the coast azalea times the azalea avocet, which I'm not sure if you know avocet. And this is an avocet. And this guy's wading in the Rio Grande River this spring. My bird friend and I went from South Padre Island, followed the Rio Grande River up to Big Bend National Park. And there's who is part of this plant. And it made a nice cross. I'm going to back up one. Also, if you just walk around the garden and collect seed pods and see what you get, these are some random seedlings. So you just almost can't go wrong. And then I took two of Harry's plants of this Ostrinum calendulaceum cross and did siblings. And they also turned out to be really nice. These buds in February look like this, the same shot in May. Just again, big ball trusses. Atlanticum and nudiflorum. If you write 100 labels for your plants, you do not want to write that. Now, some of you may or may not know, I want you to write this sentence 100 times on the blackboard. Not that I know anything about that punishment, but if you write nudi, N-U-D-I, instead of that, some of the names are crazy. But looking down on top of this truss is kind of a interesting view. And here's another result of that. So this nudiflorum and Atlanticum was a nice effort. And then here are a couple of the Beasley azaleas from Jeff Beasley down near Atlanta. My Mary times Yellow Delight. And again, here's Guy Nearing, and I think he knows how to grow good rhododendrons. This is Windbeam, one of his rhododendrons. So again, here's this structure, stuff's growing. And again, here it is now. And you can see from not a tree to solid adult trees. How to grow good rhododendrons. This is Francesca. Yellow lady slippers is a companion. And then this is really a darker purple than the picture, and that came from a nursery in southern Pennsylvania, just as unknown plant. And so again, here's our trees, and this is Normandy, which is a Leach selection, one of the few of his that did well. And then there was a Society Great Lakes member, I think, in Frostburg, Maryland, Henry Yates. He did lots of hybridizing, and my friend Harry Wise, he used lots of his plants as parents. And this is Yates' second best times Mrs. H.R. Yates. Does anyone grow silver fringe trees here? Does that grow? And you know emerald ash borer, is it in Massachusetts? Because this is a member of the olive family, which the ash, so watch your plants. They may need a dose of imidacloprid, but fringe tree is a great plant. And so it blooms when our flame azaleas are out, and medium growing shrubby tree. Well, at West Virginia Wesleyan, we have a botany professor, and she has the specialty of native orchids. And I've been to her place, and then when I worked there, saw her a lot. And she says, well, you need pitcher plants and bog plants. And I said, well, I've got enough with my rhododendrons and vegetables. I don't need another, don't need another interest. And so that's why, refusing plants, now I have 8 cement tubs full of pitcher plants and sundews. So they're fantastic also, just like any of the others. Ladies' tress orchids. And just all kinds of shapes, colors of pitchers. And then, unfortunately, offspring. So what do you do with those? And we can grow orange fringed orchids in the bogs. They're just an outstanding native plant around the New River Gorge. They're along our roadsides quite plentifully in spots. And here's pollen sacs attached to a butterfly. The orchids, a lot of orchids have trickery in their pollination, and so these guys pick up all these and move them around to the other plants to pollinate, but just quite a flower. And then you've got juvenile praying mantises kind of pushing the envelope as far as, you don't want to fall in here. Sundews galore, threadleaf sundews. And then again, kind of a dangerous spot, but only because of your own insect predators. A robber fly took it, not the pitcher plant. And then cranberries are rhododendron family, ericaceous plants, and they grow in the bog garden. And they also grow in New Jersey. And so an interstate horticulture inspection meeting, we went to New Jersey, saw the harvesting of cranberries just like the commercial. But the one thing that I didn't realize, we visited a nursery of just cranberries. So these are 2-inch cells as far as you could see of cranberry plants for commercial sale. And then cranberries in hanging pots. I'm not sure who would buy this type of thing, but anyway, just loaded with cranberries, so I guess on a deck or something it'd be something to try. And then here we go. This was the savior of everything here, ad for DDT. So again, anything you want to know about gardening, you can run down to Ace Hardware, get you a container of DDT and put it on your plants. And we all know the story of, its effect on certain species. Ospreys have rebounded fantastically. And if you have a garden in a rural setting, you're going to have other occupants beside plants. And this is my best shot ever of deer. And they say, that's a terrible shot. You've got that fence in the way. And I said, that's why that is a good shot. I'm inside the fence. They are outside the fence. And then we have no shortage of invasive plants. And this is, now you folks have stilt grass? Yeah. Oh my goodness. So folks will say, now how do I get rid of my stilt grass? Well, it's called have a seat, and then an hour later, you're done. But while you're having a seat in your garden, there's lots of other stuff going on. So out of the corner of your eye, something moving over there. So here comes this guy, and this is one mammal that has a built-in non-aggression treaty tattooed to its front. So he knows he can walk right by me. I'm not going to do anything, and he's not going to do anything, but they can be the cutest subjects going, just no touch. And then you have this little guy here in the spring, and later in the summer, here goes a tomato across the yard, and so maybe that's him taking the tomato around. And we have mole and vole control. So we've got barred owls, and we have other raptors, red-shouldered hawk. Not quite positive on him, but red-shouldered hawks, they'll sit on our pergolas watching for moles and voles, and they do their job. So off they go. and even a turtle one time. And now this is not near our yard. This is back on the hill in the edge of a brushy field. But I couldn't resist sticking, you couldn't get better subjects than this little fox family one spring. Now, if you drive around West Virginia, you're going to see native azaleas. You know, how hard can these native azaleas be to grow when they're just on the roadsides, in the abandoned fields and such? And this is in one of our mountain counties, but, you know, nobody went out and just planted 200 flame azaleas. So that's the type of places that Harry and I, we'd collect seed, pick nice ones and collect seed later. And I've had a chance to put our 4 West Virginia natives into Peter Cox's book, and that was kind of a nice thing. But here's a roadside with, you can see the color variation just in a few plants of pinkster bloom azalea. And our former governor / now U.S. Senator owns this house. It's actually the Greenbrier Resort. And I was shocked on a visit. I had to go there to condemn boxwood plants with boxwood blight. But I said, man, I did not know they had native azalea plantings at the Greenbrier. But you can just go along. Here's pinksters, here's flame azaleas, and so you want to always ask permission to go on people's lands, and with permission I don't think has ever refused. So you go through the fence and want to go see this plant here, but it's one thing to have the property owner's permission, but it's another thing to have the occupant's permission. So to get from here to there, I had to be nice to this guy. But just the flame azaleas, and if you get the mix of species, you'll get funny stuff. And just the colors are fantastic. There's our cicada brood. This is at West Virginia Wesleyan. Someone probably 40 years ago brought in some flame azaleas. And at lunch, we talked about dolly sods a little bit. So it's 4,500 elevation, a flat heath barren. This is all blueberry foliage in the fall, blueberries, mountain laurel, rhododendron maximum in sheltered spots. But this is 1975, which is not too different than who I had lunch with. And you can see the harsh climate up here. The branches can only grow in one direction, and it's just barren but full of life. And this is an aerial view, and this is dolly sods up here. But that is the textbook population of rhododendron roseum, as I still say. The rose shell azalea is absolutely stunning up there. And where there's a few trees, they'll reach big sizes. And here you can see with the windswept areas, you have a dead part of the bush down low, is thriving, but things can only come up so far before the constant wind is a factor there. But mid-June, the roseum is terrific. And then our other native azalea I call the trout stream azalea, Rhododendron arborescens. Here's a catch and release trout stream just lined with arborescens and excellent trout fishing right there. And highly fragrant, so there's nothing better than trout fishing with the aroma of sweet azaleas. And then as a bonus in the garden, this is fall foliage. And here's our plum leaf azalea. So Siberian iris, do folks grow that? Anyone? So I want to show you one shade. I've not seen this commercially anywhere, and one of our members, Sandra McDonald, brought these, and that right there, does anyone have something like that? That is unique, so we call that Sandra. And Sandra, by the way, at our fall meeting just received the ARS Award of Merit. So I was privileged to present that to her. She was our newsletter editor for over 40 years. And now I've been on the job for 26 months. But and served on the national board and just super duper ARS member. Here's the only typo I ever saw in this 6 years of magazines. That's butterfly weed. So butterfly weed's terrific. Monarch caterpillars, color shades, but the seed pods make the neatest pictures, and you'll see them floating off into the sunset on windy days. We had a member for many years whose hobby was tree peonies along with rhodos, and he would bring tree peony seedlings to the meetings, and they've done famously. And Appalachia / West Virginia is a great wildflower destination. Twin leaf Jeffersonia, I guess this was Thomas Jefferson's favorite spring wildflower over in the Blue Ridge, but this is twin leaf, and you can see the two leaves, hence the name. Bloodroot, Dutchman's breeches, all these things. Here's our Fantastica again with trilliums. Virginia bluebells, trilliums, bloodroot. This is Gable's early bird right here, bellflower. And now, does anyone grow green dragon? Is it a Massachusetts plant? Do you have it?
It'll grow here.
Joe, okay. It grows in our central West Virginia, and it's just a neat looking member of the Jack in the Pulpit family. And then has these big seed structures, and the bugs, who knows, they'll pop up now all over the garden. And then people will say, well, are you digging all these plants and this and that? And like, our pathways are just seed beds. This is a sidewalk. You know, I did not plant a seed an inch from the sidewalk. I didn't put 3 dozen bluebell seedlings just in the gravel path to have to dig them up. Again, trilliums, trout lilies. We have loads of trilliums. This is sessile trillium. And here's a really neat foliage form, great white trilliums. This plant is Yaku Fairy times Mary Fleming. Trilliums galore. This is red trillium, the wake robin, and this is hybridized with the great white, but you see the purple ovary identifies it as a red trillium, different color forms. There's the typical. So trillium season is super duper. Here's the Yaku fairy, Tom Mary Fleming. And then we have white trout lilies, the white form of the yellow, which is that. And then, you know, they address the issue of over-collecting, and that was a problem back, you know, early 1900s up through the middle, just commercially digging, picking all these flowers for commercial markets. Pink lady slippers galore. One thing you can do is just take seed pods, scatter them around. This is celandine poppy, and after a few years, they've taken care of themselves. And then trailing arbutus. I don't think I've ever seen an article. Has anyone seen an article dedicated to trailing arbutus in any magazine? So trailing arbutus was overpicked. These are highly fragrant, waxy little nosegays of flowers, attractive, and they're ericaceous, but just highly prized. Philadelphia, D.C., probably up through New England, selling them on street corners and wiping out the native populations. But they're quite common. They grow with mountain laurel generally, so we try to visit these every spring. Probably everyone has some ferns. Out of all our West Virginia ferns we have, I like maidenhair fern, and then the three big ferns, royal fern, cinnamon fern, and then interrupted fern, the Osmunda bunch. And these have massive, fibrous root balls, just massive. And the orchid growers back in the 1800s, early 1900s would use Osmunda fiber as their orchid medium. So these were being dug in certain areas for the orchid folks, you know, the hothouse orchid people. But these are 2 to 4 feet tall ferns and just structurally really nice, placed here and there. We're not on the migratory flyways in central West Virginia, but we still get birds come through, a number of warblers, and we have a number that are residents on our property. But hooded warbler there, right there he is. Northern parula, they're the butterflies of the bird world, just the brightly colored. Magnolia warbler. This is in our brushy fields, blue-winged warbler. Common or Maryland yellowthroat, black-throated green from up in our high residents of our high counties, yellow warbler, and yellow warbler in the fall. Does anyone grow Joe Pye weed? That, okay, it's, you know, 4 to 8 feet tall, and come August, full regalia. And then Cape May warblers come through. That's a black walnut right there. And this is one of our native clematis, which I love. This is Clematis viorna. It grows in West Virginia, but it's a clematis, but it is not overbearing. And if it comes up near some of our deciduous azaleas, we just let them be the framework. Here's our azalea. Here's the seed pod, which are kind of attractive when they're fresh. Of course, viburnums. There's dozens of viburnums. There's maple leaf, arrowwood, double file, viburnum plicatum, and this is Shasta, which is a bird magnet. Shasta, just an ocean of white flowers. And then come July, when these berries are ready, everybody, the bug eaters, the berry eaters, robins, everybody's on board for Shasta berries. This is a kingbird, which is a flycatcher, but he cannot turn down ripe Shasta berries. And then veggies, back to the Victory Garden, which is lots of articles on any kind of vegetable. And here's some of a typical summer haul here. And of course, putting up food, which I could not get my wife to pose, but we usually try to do 100 to 120 quarts of everything a year. And, just all kinds of vegetable. So this used to be azalea beds, but once we quit the nursery, turned it into food production because no one ever gave me a recipe for rhododendron dishes. So we're sticking with other stuff. And herbs. And then here's a favorite, the classic cartoon, just work, work, work. But then when you're saddled with don't go anywhere with COVID, well, no big deal. We just get down and grab something out of the cellar. And lady slippers. This is the Kentucky lady slipper right here. And yellow lady slippers. These two for us are very easy to grow. And then we have showy lady slipper, yellow, pink, and then mountain. So lady slippers. Here's our showy. Here's our yellows. Here's our pinks with an albino. And then this is mountain lady slippers from near Banff out west. And then also the California lady slipper. And this area, Antelope Creek, was really devastated by fires about 4 or 5 years ago, so I don't know what's what, but we're lady slipper hunting. And what's going on up here? So again, we've got orchids and ericas growing together. So this is Occidentale, the western native azalea, and again, highly fragrant. And last winter, every day from November 20 to March 6th, this little kinglet greeted me every morning with my peanut butter suet mix-up. And this is a phone picture. Growing up to take a picture with a phone, impossible. But phone picture of that guy, and that was not quite so clear, but he's every day, just 10 to 15 seconds, get his full and off. Next morning, right when you walk out the door. Of course, hand feeding, that's great. This is my niece here. I said, come out, help me feed the birds. And I said, now here, put this and hold it up, and here you go. So that was thrilling. I mean, it's thrilling to me. And then nest building, this is our horsehair in the suet feeder. And is there a housing shortage? So, providing cavities for cavity dwellers, that's 1946. And we also, we've got our big pileated woodpecker, also put out cotton, the real thing from South Carolina cotton fields, yellow-throated warbler, getting ready for that. I call that my Groucho Marx picture right there. And this fella comes in, I think in 10 years I've had this, we've had 3 different years with occupants. They'll be there and then they're not, then they're back. But another one, hitting the moles and voles. And then, of course, here's the tree swallows. And not only do I have the Victory Garden magazines, but I have Bird Lore, which became Audubon magazine from the 1930s through the 50s. And so this is of local interest. This fellow from Worcester, Massachusetts, he decided that birds would have a better chance if he had 3 holes instead of just 1. You have three openings so that the young are lined up instead of the strongest one hogging all the food. But I mean, we have lots of tree swallows in boxes, but I'm not sure I can't imagine 600 swallows on your property. But, so here's a 2-holer I made, and the birds, they will come to feed this one, this one, this one, this one. So here's the 3. Now these ones are not quite up and out the hole, but when there are 3 lined up there, I don't do hours of studying, but they will just catch them one right after another. And so Mr. Kinney there estimated that he had over 90% fledgling rate instead of 60 to 70%. This is Wednesday morning, so my bluebird said it's time to start feeding us. We're not waiting until the young are out of the nest. So being bossed around by the birds. But Windbeam, Dexter Champagne, Rhodo season's coming along. Chinese dogwood, my big purple, Harry's Chapmanii hybrid, and Rhodos galore at home, Catawbas in the wild. So then it'll be fall, another year will go by. And this is my Massachusetts parting shot right there. And thank you again for having me.